Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fiume, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the CEO of Lime Fresh Mexican Grill, Patrick Fore. Before I introduce today's guest, here are three things you'll learn from today's show. Number one, the story behind the brand's rare comeback, surviving 3 ownership changes and emerging stronger than ever. 2, how Lime Fresh is expanding through creative, non-traditional outlets. And finally, how a Miami-born fast casual brand reinvented itself into Lime Fresh 2.0. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Hi, Frank. How are you?
Doing great. I'm glad to finally have you on.
I know. I've been looking forward to this for a while now. Thanks for the opportunity to tell our story.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear your story. I know we talked a little bit before the show, and I'd love for you to share with the audience kind of the origin of Lime Fresh Mexican Grill, how this whole thing got started, and how you kind of came into play, because I think it's got a pretty fascinating, a different kind of story of not just an emerging brand, but a re-emerging brand. And we don't get those every day on the show.
Yeah, I think you nailed the re-emerging term. In 2004, Lime Fresh was founded on South Beach, a Miami born and bred, healthy, focused, fast casual energy. As time expanded, the original owner transitioned his interest to Ruby Tuesday, who then had a time at bat, as we say. Ruby Tuesdays grew the brand into 7 or 8 different states, enjoyed, I think, kind of catching a little bit of QSR wave and energy as the 08s and the early aughts turned the dates. And we are the third owner after taking ownership from Ruby Tuesdays. And Frank, I like to say that we've evolved the brand into what maybe fast casual would have, I guess, evolved into over a 22-year period, in advancing now what we call Lime Fresh 2.0, which is very different from maybe the original founding energy, but very much still focused on healthy, very much still focused on fresh.
Patrick, there are so many businesses that do not last. They close up shop. They never recover. This business not only had this change during the Great Recession, but getting to a third owner in a short period of time without a whole lot of growth is pretty amazing. In other words, what makes Lime Fresh so special and so different that it survived all this? Because most companies would not have survived. They would have gone out of business. Is it just the food? Is it the experience? There's got to be something totally different, because there's plenty of Mexican grills to go around that a business doesn't have to be acquired. Somebody can just start a new one.
You nailed it. I often say to the team and some of our incoming partners, look, the world does not need another taco stand. There's plenty out there, right? What we want to do is just be a better version and provide a little stronger why. And I think one of the strongest reasons, Frank, for some of the stickiness is the heritage of the brand, having a Miami born and bred story, weathering some of those economic hardships, be that the downturn, be that COVID, and being able to still be relevant. When we adopted the brand, we kind of proffered the future of what Lime 2.0 would look like, and have advanced now the new model with a full bar component. And so we've kind of been able to, I think, bridge the gap in some of what the customers kind of know and expect in fast casual restaurants. Sit down, get a number, the tableside service happens, and then being able to advance a hybrid model where full service at the bar happens. It allows the consumer to either spend as much time as they want, have a couple margaritas with us, or if they're pressed for time, move on. And I think that's part of the reason why it's so sticky. The staying power still meets with the consumer's time constraints, if that makes sense. But that's how I think about part of that.
What about you, your history? Because I did a little bit of research, and you go back to being a VP back with Tijuana Flats for a very long time. So it wasn't like you came into Mexican Grill with, you came in with some substantial experience for a very long time in real estate and construction?
Yes, I was fortunate to join the company during when we had only 4 stores or 5 stores at Tijuana Flats. It's not lost on me the irony to go work for what was at that time a competitor at a higher level. But yes, during my tenure it was over a decade, I kind of had 3 acts. The first was to build and run a franchise sales organization.
Hmm.
The second was to take those learnings and do that for corporate development. And the third is to sit on the board and was a part of the Tiger team that led to the private equity transition in 2016 when we sold the company to private equity. Soon thereafter, transitioned to go do something else, but it gave me a unique perspective. A lot of us alumni from that era of
Hmm.
Tijuana have now moved on and moved into C-suite positions because it did something to us. It was like the best OJT you could possibly get. We didn't know it at the time. The culture was infectious, and
We never do.
charge is to try to, yeah, I know it's, geez, and I started when I had hair. It's the cost of doing business, so to speak, but a tremendous set of great leadership. And I still talk to both of my mentors who came out of that decade plus. Take some of those learnings and apply them to Lime Fresh, most notably the culture, most notably the part of the people in the hospitality heart, which in our vernacular just means you got to have a heart for hospitality to take care of people with food. And it's amazing to me how many restaurants, they don't even get that part right.
Right.
They miss the right.
Right.
So yes, that is the background.
Okay, what drew you though to Lime Fresh to leave Tijuana Flats? You were there what 12 years or so. What kind of led you to Lime Fresh and into that opportunity, Greg? Because you started with the VP as a VP of business development.
Right. In the interim between leaving the past chapter with Tijuana, went on a little bit of a soul search and built and co-founded a software as a service startup, which was very interesting. Logistics, that's meant for a different podcast, I'm sure. But out of that learning and driving the bus and co-founding a company, it kind of got the itch again to go and be a part of either launching or relaunching a brand. The chairman is a friend of mine, and he and I got to know each other years back. And he said, look, I honestly think I could use some of your help on this. you know, can you come over and give us some position, some advice? And I said, look, the timing isn't right. I'm not interested in the position. But lo and behold, it's amazing how stars align. And he's still involved with the business. But it was quickly apparent that that transition from Tijuana into software gave me an interesting perspective on how to think about technology in the restaurant space. And I use a little bit of those skills here at Lime Fresh. The rest is a story of trying to retool the brand, get back to relevancy. We've done a lot of hard work to renovate the menu, to push forward new LTO'd items, to look at the technology stack in the restaurant business and try to make it a lot more easier or more user friendly.
Mhm.
And then the output of that will be the growth. But it's been a journey for sure. And I'd known everything that I knew when I started. I'd have been like, okay, well, where does this going to go? And it's been a journey and an honor to lead the team and work with a lot of like-minded folks like
That's
myself.
awesome. I hear that story all the time from so many people, and it happened kind of in my own journey as well in business, where it's almost to our benefit that we don't know how difficult and how big the challenges are going to be ahead of time, because we might not actually take them on. We might be like, I don't need this trouble. I'll go do something else. What were a few of the things? I'd love to
Right.
hear your perspective. What were maybe like the top three things when you came in, you're like, we've got to fix these three things first and foremost to get this brand going again?
The brand being in transition, there were two things that were immediately apparent. The brand had not experienced any meaningful menu innovation,
Hmm.
renovation, if you will. We embarked on a year and a half journey and traveled all over the country, Frank, New York, Austin, Chicago, West Coast, all over, and ate our way through those cities. The result of that was a project that we call One Whole Lime. The brand was fractured. There were menus, there were different aesthetic appeals. And so in the coming together, it was very apparent that we couldn't change the format in terms of fast casual. We couldn't change the real estate, but the things we could change was the plate appeal. And so we went after menu first. And under that direction, we have renovated almost 30% of the menu items that were long legacy, long ago a part of that journey. And have finally have, as of March of this year, begin to watch our P-mix move, pulling Miami's internationality
Hmm.
forward in the menu, being able to pull a little bit of that Miami Mex versus Mexican Mex
Nice.
forward, and in some of the flavor profiles. We've got kimchi, we've got spicy aioli, we've got some interesting things going on with our newfound license in this, and I'm happy to report that the menu engineering continues to yield my two promises to my partners: one, net new dollar, and to reactivate what I call Lazarus customers, those customers that grew up with the brand because we're 20
Hmm.
years old, that are coming back and saying, hey, you guys have got some novel innovation going here. We've got some new flavors. And that's been an enjoyable part of, I think, a very important P&L check of the box to make sure that we're still doing right by that, the system of restaurants.
Nice. I'm still trying to get past the fact that there was a job where you have to travel the country and eat your way through different Mexican grills. To me, if that job ever opens up again, I may want to, apply.
Yeah, by the time we sat in this big conference room in San Francisco, I had my chef and I had my leadership team there, and our team flew out from the East Coast. It's storytelling is like, oh, that must have been terrible. Poor you. You had to travel and go. At the end of it, you go and eat at another restaurant. Please stop, right? It was a great moment in time. And the nice part is that it happened so long ago. We're actually going to be doing that again in the tail end of 2026. Probably not domestically. We've got some trips to do that and seek the flavors and go to Thailand. We've got some plans to go to Eastern Asia as well as India, and to try to continue to push the novel and nuance,
Hmm.
not to a point where it's going to go, what are you trying to do, but to
Right.
continue to try to get those honed flavors here domestically before they get put on the menu or the cover of a magazine.
Okay, fair. Patrick, I'm a very simple guy. I judge a Mexican place based on the chips, the salsa, and the guac. Like that to me is like that's right there is a huge part of the test. How does Lime Fresh measure up?
We have a saying, and that is kind of working its way through the menu engineering, which is sexy food sells, right? So
Hmm.
you have to have the Instagram ability that plate appeals for sure, but you can't leave the flavor behind. The guacamole and the queso are award winning. We've not changed those. The customers told us in a focus group, please
Don't
do
you
not change
dare touch
anything
it.
about that. And it's funny, Frank, because I'm the same way. You have your choice to eat at restaurants. I
Sure.
judge a Mexican place, a Tex-Mex place, by the thickness of the quesadilla. If I get a
Oh,
cardboard thin quesadilla, you go, "What are you trying to pull here?" Right? So we try to advance that knowledge, and I say thick quesadillas are the way to go. So you and I
right.
share that same kind of litmus.
Cool. Patrick, how far in when you were working, in business development with the company that you realized, I think we're onto something, we're turning the corner and started feeling the momentum? How long did that take?
Frank, it was probably 2 years into my joining the company here. There were
Hmm.
a lot of hypotheses, how much menu could be disturbed without losing the base, how much technology needed to be changed, what the brick and mortar costs were going to end up evolving into if we were going to scale this. And so it's an imperfect answer, but it was roughly a couple years. There was always the thought, yeah, we really got something special here. But in the opening of our second company store with Disney property in Western Orlando, and watching that second version of ourselves, that second
Hmm.
brick and mortar come to life with the lessons and learning from the first store in Orlando East come together, it was one of those, okay, and that was roughly 2 years, a long two
Yeah.
years, but a 2 year less.
And then how long did it take before you became the CEO of the company?
A year in, what I was asked to do was provide some actionable intelligence and some analysis to come in and talk about growth. What I found was a company that had some structural things that needed to be put in place first before we earned the right to grow. And so
Mm.
that was that 2 year journey, structurally getting things ready, making sure that the P&L numbers were there, more than just labor and food cost, right? How do we think about loyalty? How do we think about technology? Getting the supply chain and the marketing spun up was hard enough. Still is a challenge, but it's on those underpinnings. We kind of said, okay, now it feels like we've got enough value to offer. Be that to ourselves, be that to franchisees that are interested in growing alongside of us.
Sure. Patrick, I love when I talk to CEOs or founders that are so transparent and share with us, the warts of the company when they were starting out and stuff. And I'd love to know if go back from when the time you came on board with the company, is there anything that you would have changed? If there's one thing you could do differently, because you guys went through a lot of growing pains of kind of reinventing yourselves, anything that you could have done, if you could go back that you'd kind of shortcut it and say, man, we should have, skipped this?
It's a good question, Frank. I think when I first came in, the company was evaluating building, in essence, their own app. And it was apparent that we could go to a white label solution, and that really focused more on pretty pictures than it really focused on providing the consumer experience and a loyalty experience that was going to be valued to the customer. I think the mistake that we made early was focusing too much on the pretty pictures and the way in which maybe the app worked, the flow, and a
Sure.
little bit less focus on really what customers were interested in. That was a big misstep for us, and one where we're going to be renovating here very soon in the first quarter of next year to rectify that problem.
Nice. The real reason why I brought that up, Patrick, is because I found even in my own experience that sometimes when we go through an experience like that, we realize, okay, we never want to do that again. As years go on, you'll have a new set of franchisees that don't know that story. And they'll say, you know what we really need? We need this. And you can go back to, we've actually tried that. Here's what happens. Because as time goes on, we have new generations of people that are in the system, right? And we learn from those experiences. Nobody's ever perfect. I've never met a perfect brand. And we have to stub our toe sometimes. We have to be willing to try and pivot. And it sounds like that's something that has been ingrained in your culture at the company, is we've got to fix something. We have to try. We can't be afraid to fail.
You're exactly right, and a lot of what our menu engineering was just that, right? To kind of talk less about what the technology solution that we've done differently, but very much more current events over the past probably 6 months to go. Not everything in the test kitchen is going to work in the real world, and we got it wrong. We got a couple menu items out there and was like, oh no, oh no, that's not going well. That's not plating well. Feedback, we're getting so many go backs and like, well, man, we missed that data. And so, yes, you're right. I mean, if anything, I'm transparent things that don't go well. We learn a lot from them though. And it congeals the team. When I thought the mistakes were going to be a lot of long faces. Oh, woe was us. And they said, okay, great, this didn't work, but I tell you what did, or we learned a better way to make a better item, to reduce 30 little ticket time. So there was some value there. Not all of it was perfect.
I agree. We have to celebrate these, we call them failures. We have to celebrate these, where we step back for a bit. It was somebody's idea that started out. We got together as a group. We decided, hey, we're going to try this. It didn't work. But what it lends, though, is it lends that there's voices in your organization that can share ideas and say, hey, I've got an idea. And that it's actually embraced by the group and say, well, let's try this out, as opposed to, we're not going to try anything. We're going to stick with, this is the menu. We're never going to change. And that kind of ruins the culture. So that culture of openness and willing to try new things is something that should be really, commended for you guys.
We feel that way. Everyone has a seat at the table. When we did our menu engineering, we actually had 3 menu engineering meetings, and I put everybody in the room together. Love them, hate them, good feedback, negative feedback. It was a war room, and the room was covered in wash and sticky notes and presentations and red X's and how is this going to food cost? And you go walk out of that room like, kind of need a minute from like one of those the TV movies and go, oh man, the war room's going off right now. It was a collaborative, and we did stub our toe a few times as we've talked about, but at all points, I wanted to hear from my chef Sharon, who has been with the brand 17 years. She had a heritage story to tell about some of the items that we shouldn't disturb, and we had a really high powered chef coming. But what if we were to change it, enhance the flavors a bit, and to watch the two of them go? And that was just pop the popcorn, sit back and watch a little bit. It's
Right.
definitely a learning moment from.
Oh, that's awesome. Tell me about something else you guys are doing a little differently. I'd love for you to share about the non-traditional type locations that you're looking to expand. And I believe you've done something, right, with the Florida Panthers?
Right. When we look at non-traditional outlets as being a tremendous hub and spoke kind of concept for the brands, the Panthers came to us fairly recently, about 2 years now, with an opportunity we couldn't pass. I got a heck of a shout out to that team for obviously going back to back with their Stanley Cup, which is wonderful. But their food operator was looking for more of a local flair in food. Obviously, you don't get any more local than Lime Fresh. A year and a half ago, we co-concepted a brand, and so Lime Fresh is alive and well inside the Panthers arena, a Merit Bank arena, and it's a version of the menu, Frank, that we can execute, or rather that team can execute at high volume. So it's not the full bird menu. It's just the best and the brightest. We had to make some early menu changes there because, boy, it looked great, but we just couldn't put it together in 30 seconds. Again, learning in real time.
Right. Do you see yourself using that as a means of expansion to other locations and doing things at other NHL arenas or Major League Baseball stadiums or the like?
Absolutely. As we grow inside and outside of Florida, for sure and for certain, it's a part of a strategy that has to dovetail, right? A lot of brands that a lot of facilities are looking for brands that are already in the market to kind of regionalize that conversation. So I don't know that it's the first growth area in Atlanta, for example, or Charlotte, but it's commensurate. It'll always be a playbook.
Okay. Since so many people who watch or listen to this podcast are emerging brands, they're starting out, they're always looking for the magic bullet, something that's going to save their business. And I try to tell people that there's no one thing that's going to save your business. I'm afraid there's going to be somebody out there who's going to say, aha, that's what I need to do. I need to get into a NHL arena and my business is going to explode. So would you please warn people on what the expectations are when you do take on a challenge like that? Because it's not for the faint at heart, and it's probably not for a brand that's just starting out.
I think those are wise words, Frank. I do. The listeners would need to know that their rate of or their span of control would likely change, right? If you're licensing that concession operation or non-traditional, and so it's your baby. You want to have a lot of control and a lot of advice and guidance, and that's not enough paprika. You're missing cilantro. Well, you get a little bit of a version of yourself when you do that. Try as they might, in our partners with the Panthers, they've come to our restaurants. They do menu tests. We meet with them twice a year. So there are some shining examples of those that do a great job. But I think for your listeners, that'd be just a cautionary word to make sure that any deal that you do and the paperwork that's signed, that you spend a good time talking about quality control, access to that quality control, where you're able to come in and help that development team or that assembly team along in a way that I think strengthens the brand. That would be where they should start.
Nice. Tell me about the type of person that really thrives in your franchise system. Who do you look for?
We are after two different types of people. I will say it expressed as veterans, capital V. Today is Veterans Day, so happy veterans to our veterans that might be listening in. And then veterans of the industry. The two being very different, but similar in one respect, that structure and discipline can maximize the results of commitment and hard work, right? So those two groups are emerging for us as those that we're trying to attract in a multiple area development arrangement, perhaps. But they understand that we're going to give them food training. They have to understand that showing up, being on time, being on schedule, having a smiling face at the front door is a part of being a partner of ours. And so those are the two groups that we're after the hot and heaviest. We've got some great opportunities with both groups coming to the table, which is exciting for this part of my journey or our journey together.
And right now you guys are all in Florida, between South Florida and Orlando area as of now. What's the expansion strategy? You're looking to continue to grow in Florida and kind of go up north and stay in the Southeast, or are you looking to grow coast to coast? What's the thoughts there?
Battle scar lesson learned from previous employee at a tech shop. Informs us of our current strategy, right? Florida's our focus. It's our home. It's where the brand had earlier exposure with other expansion efforts by Ruby. So we're going to develop the home base here. And so I'm excited that that's going to be our focus over the next probably 12 to 18 months. Okay. Not necessarily try to put Lime Fresh on every market, but that's going to highly be our preferred area of development. Restructured what we call a Sweethearts development agreement for those hot markets that we feel are going to end up hitting the ground running the fastest. Great. And after that, it's 95, 75, 85, growing in the eastern corridor, east of the Mississippi, we'll say, because we're going to need to be on planes and trains. We're going to need to be able to be a present franchisor, and not in a way that I want to enforce with a stick, rather just with a carrot. And I've also got team members to think about their quality of life. So we're
Okay.
gonna do the slow amoeba thing.
How long am I going to have to wait, though, in South Tampa for a Lime Fresh to open?
Ooh, not very long.
Really? I wasn't expecting that answer. All right. Not very long. Okay. I'm ready.
I would say more. I'm sorry to step on you. I would say more, but we're under NDA, so it's exciting.
Ooh.
The Tampa market for the brand was a part of the expansion. They had several. We as Lime Fresh had several stores there. They did
Mhm.
tremendous in terms of their volume for the brand. And so I think it's important for the listeners also that as a re-emerging brand, where the brand had presence before, and it's a turnaround story or a renovation. The
Sure.
hypothesis we're working through is maybe we're not starting from ground zero. We get people that come into our stores all the time in Orlando go, "Oh yeah, I used to go to," and they would name one of the locations. And then the next thing they say is, "But this doesn't look anything like that. And you have a full bar?" Like that's the aha moment. So in going back to the Tampa, the Northern Orlandos, the Jacksonvilles, maybe we have to work a little less hard on explaining what Lime Fresh is.
Hmm.
And time will tell if the hypothesis is correct.
Sounds good. What's the investment range to open a location?
For primary or first generation space, the build to costs are going to end up being from just a construction and FF&E perspective,
Hmm.
between a furniture, fixture, and equipment perspective, between 1.1 and 1.4.
Hmm.
If it's a second generation space, we've got a high degree of flexibility within that. And the model permits us for Florida focus between 2,000 and 2,500 square feet. So those numbers I just quoted come down significantly for second generation spaces. And that's the name of the game right now. I'm sure doing what you do, you hear constantly the pressure that real estate here in Florida is under. And so we as a franchisor also must be flexible, hence the non-traditionals that kind of fold into the discussion.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, obviously franchising is not new to you. You've been around a long time in the business, but is anything that you would share with the audience that you would say is probably the thing that has surprised you the most in franchising?
The most surprising thing in franchising for me has, I guess, the second time at bat here on a Tex-Mex journey is the relative level of sophistication of some of these groups they're massive owners of Taco Bells or Burger Kings. They've got hundreds of units under their management, and they're interested in diversifying their portfolio in going maybe a little bit something a bit more hip or a little
Yeah.
bit more novel and nuanced. I don't know that that's an aha for you, the audiences, but what is interesting is the generational shift that's happening where mom and dad started this empire. And perhaps there are some generational changes happening. And that's been the interesting thing to watch from the sidelines as maybe the 30 something, 40 somethings, or maybe early 50 somethings are taking the helms from mom and dads with
Right.
heritage brands that have been around 40, 50 years. That was oh, wow, I didn't see that coming kind of comment. And it's been a pleasant surprise.
Franchising for me overall has changed dramatically in the last 20 years. I feel like the level of sophistication of the owners has evolved and has grown, especially in some of these brands
Mhm.
where, there's more multi-unit franchise opportunities out there. So that evidently has lended itself also to a more sophisticated buyer. You're not going to get a mom and pop who's never owned a business before to say, I want to open 5 of these off the bat.
I will echo that same comment. I agree with your statement 100%.
Do you, what's your feeling on the single unit franchise owner versus somebody coming in and wanting to open multi locations?
We get the question a lot. I think where the brand is currently placed between Orlando and South Florida, a single unit operation is possible. We will greenlight that because we're
Hmm.
already down in the markets. We know the markets well. That individual may come under the veterans program, right? And that
Sure.
will be kind of curated. Separate bucket. I don't have a problem doing individual deals, but it needs to be a strong why. For example, we wouldn't take a single deal and go to upstate New York or even northern Atlanta. We would look at a ADA structure and be a bit more common sense for that commitment that we're making as a brand. But where the brand has existed, be that Tampa with strong sales, Orlando with strong sales, or South Florida, there's still room for single unit deals for sure.
And as the CEO, strategically, Patrick, what's your take on additional company owned locations? Do you have the need to feel like you need to seed more markets with company owned locations, or are you going all franchising here on out? And you have the right to change your mind too, by the way.
Disclaimer at the bottom to
Oh,
change, right? No, I get it. I
I'm
love it.
speaking from
Uh,
experience with that one, by the way.
yeah, Sure, and they would do some great storytelling back and forth to learn from you too. The company needs to, under my tenure, be a
Yeah.
credible resource for franchise expansion, meaning that we will always have a company store or two within our portfolio. We want to play alongside and learn alongside. I'm responsible for innovation first before our partners will. As subsequent to another corporate location, I would say yes, it would probably take the form of a joint venture versus
Hmm.
just an out and out company hunting its own store. I've got some experience having done that with other restaurant expansions, and that is a model we're pursuing currently. We will be the owner per se, but we'll have an owner operator that would be coming in. So it wouldn't surprise me if that model is something that pops up soon in South Florida, Miami area.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll leave it at that. Where do you see the brand growing over the next 5 to 10 years? Do you have a target of number of locations or a number of states that you'd like to be in over the next decade?
My mentor is always kind of ringing in my ear, right? That there are companies and bankers and private equity that will look at a certain number of units and going, aha, you're relevant and let's talk to
Right.
you. Nobody remembers the date of an opening. No one remembers the campaign launch on March the 1st. No one remembers the original set of menu items. But all of us remember how well or how poorly it was executed. And I think about the same thing when it comes to growth. Frank, I would rather be a very successful, condensed 40 to 50 unit operation total then I would rather be a 200 store operation that's scattered and regionally not relevant. And that may end up meaning that we miss a few opportunities. It may not. It may mean that main opportunities for us don't necessarily materialize. But I'm okay with that. As I think I said at the open, the world doesn't need another taco stand, but the taco stands that do exist need to do a better job. And I think that mantra about doing it well, doing it right, applies to growth and expansion by picking the right partners. If that means that we miss out on a 50-unit deal, I'll be here for that. That's okay. We'll have the ability to celebrate the brand a bit differently, and that may not make a lot of sense to some of your listeners. But I think that
Sure.
the span of control and the quality is the only thing that you can commit to when you're doing the growth the right way.
Yeah, for sure. I hope founders and CEOs that are listening or watching this take that to heart because I've come across hundreds of brands in the past few years and there's too many brands in franchising that don't make it. They don't get it. They don't understand. They think franchising is just the shortcut way of success and thinking they go on autopilot once they become a franchisor. They have no clue despite all the resources that are out there in franchising. And it's unfortunate that there is no shortcut. There's no other way around it. You have to deliver a great experience to people. Franchising is the long game and it's not easy. And finding great partners is also a challenge, and being willing to say no and turn away from deals. What you said right there is inherently a huge problem for brands starting out is they don't want to tell anybody no.
Think about it like this. If it's Friday night and it's 7 o'clock and you have somebody calling you, is the first reaction to go, let me just take this. This will just be 2 seconds. Let me go knock this out. Or is the other alternative going, oh, here we go. Right? You got to think like a franchisor and a partner in somebody like that, right? Because those are real
Yes.
world examples of a tale of two cities, right? I don't
Yes.
mean to beleaguer the point, but that's how it feels, and then that is a totally different sensation when you think about practicing that art of hospitality. Well, your partners deserve hospitality too. They deserve service. They deserve answers. They deserve timely communication. They deserve to be helped along their journey and in
Right.
realizing that that's your charge. That's our charge.
Yeah. Patrick, tell me why now? Why now is a great time for folks to join your system and be part of Lime Fresh?
We have, over the past 18 months, won more awards and garnered the getting back to Lime Fresh mojo mantra. It has been our 4-year journey to basically pull back to relevancy. And as we look at the taco, Tex-Mex space, Mexican space, what I think Lime Fresh 2.0 has to offer is for those diversifying their portfolios, strong margin contributions, scalability and conversation, right? Those are the get your ticket punched first, right?
Mhm.
But an exciting cocktail menu, relevant price point that runs right now between the average ticket at 24 to 27, depending upon the alcohol mix. Being able to come alongside of a 22-year history and watching the brand get back to this relevancy isn't just merely about winning awards, but it's
Right.
about signal testing, watching some of that P-mix and go, wow, they've done it. My operators, they go at this every day. They're consistently executing sexy food. And if that consistency is attractive to anyone, it's got to be attractive to franchisees looking for just that, right? The ability for that sexy food, the environment, the cocktail mix, all coming together now and expressed as Lime Fresh 2.0. That's my why we're doing so hard and why we've relaunched our franchise sales program.
Well, Patrick, you guys have done an incredible job. I wish you all the best and continued success. I cannot wait for you to finally open in Tampa. I'd love to be invited to the soft opening, by the way. I know Anthony would as well. Right, Anthony?
Absolutely.
You bet.
My mouth is watering.
You
right
bet. Absolutely. Those will be guest 1 and 2 for sure. That would be
great. That'd be great. Anyway, finally, Patrick, tell us if someone was interested in opening up a Lime Fresh Mexican grill, where would they go?
And just navigate over to franchise.limefreshmexicangrill.com. It's a stand-up splash webpage. You can certainly send it after. And on there is all the information about how to become a partner. There's a white paper also that was produced, kind of educating people that are coming from the outside world and saying, how do you want to think about franchising and how do you want to think about menu or food franchising, not just merely Lime Fresh. So happy to have that out there as a talking piece. And it does help us have better conversations with incoming partners for sure.
Awesome. Patrick, thank you so much for being on the show today. And again, I wish you all the best. And I can't wait to see you in Tampa one day.
It's been a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you so much, Frank. Thanks for the opportunity to share and happy to spend this time together.
Hosting this show has been one of the great honors of my career. When I started this journey just 28 months ago, I never imagined we'd reach over 1 million views and nearly 20,000 subscribers. It's been humbling and far beyond what I thought was possible. Now, with 220 episodes behind us, we're going to take a hiatus. But stay tuned because something new and exciting is taking shape, and I can't wait to share it with you when the time is right. Along the way, I've noticed unmistakable patterns across founders. I've seen myself in so many of their stories, their hunger, their doubts, their breakthroughs. I've celebrated those who've built with purpose and empathized with those still finding their way. This podcast has been more than a series of conversations. It's been a mirror reflecting what it really takes to build something special from the ground up. Thanks again for listening and for being part of this incredible ride.